possible cure of the pandemic. Collaborations in that direction have sprung up by research institutes towards this end. This is our focus today on Panorama, coming to you live from Ibadan on the network service of the NTA. First, the news of the day. I am Kemi Oshi. Thanks for joining us. The Federal Executive Council has approved further amendments of 2020-2022 Medium Expenditure Framework, as well as 2020 Appropriation Act. This is in response to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the nation's economy. The Finance Budget Planning, Zaid Ahmed announced a new after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council. Correspondent Adamu Sabo reports is an resolutions of the nation's highest policy organ of the Nigerian government.
This is the first virtual meeting of the Federal Executive Council in the nation's history. President Muhammadu Buhari presided over the meeting from the Executive Council chambers, joined by Vice President Yemi Oshibanju and few members who had memos to present, while others participated from their offices across the nation's capital. This is in compliance with a social distancing protocol aimed at containing the spread of the novel coronavirus pandemic.
Government thought it was important, even to fight COVID-19 also, to find ways of running government, and that is why we resorted to technology.
Several memos were therefore considered and approved by the Council, including the amendment to key parameters of the 2020 budget.
The crude oil price is approved at $25 per barrel. Crude oil production at 1.94 million barrels per day, and then an exchange rate of 360 naira to $1. The revised budget is now in the total sum of 10.523 trillion, a difference of just about 71.5 billion when compared to the approved budget.
With the cutting down of the budget size, the government brought in new expenditure not previously budgeted to adequately respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. The federal government will therefore have a direct substantial revenue for funding the budget, while the deficit of 5.365 trillion naira will be financed by both domestic and foreign borrowings made up of concessionary loans from the IMF, World Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and Afrexim Bank.
We also presented to Council a request on behalf of Ebonyi State Government for a loan of $80 million from the Islamic Development Bank for the construction of the Abakaliki Ring Road project.
The minister also secured the Council's approval for the purchase of 3 operational boats for the Nigeria Customs Service for surveillance and anti-corruption activities on maritime waters. The Minister of Agriculture, Sabuna Nonu, announced the approval of another loan facility of about 950 million euro for agricultural mechanization in the country, which he described as a major revolution in Nigeria's agricultural sector.
We have an estimated 84 to 92 million hectares of land. We are only tilling about 34 million hectares. If we are going to move agriculture forward in this country, it's absolutely necessary for us to mechanize.
47.2 billion naira revised estimated cost for the augmentation of subsisting contract has also been approved by the Council for the provision of additional critical power grid infrastructure.
This is for the full evacuation, delivered and utilization of 40 megawatts currently being generated from Kashimbila via Takum, Wukari, and then Yandef to the national grid. And in fact, if it is not evacuated, Nigerian government will lose not less than 120 gigawatts of power, which is equivalent to almost $9 million in air.
The Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, on his part, announced the approval of the Council of over 683.6 million naira for the purchase of 19 operational vehicles for the Nigerian Post Authority. This, he said, is the first time in the last 4 years that NPA is acquiring vehicles to assist in the execution of its mandate of governing and operating the nation's ports. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
Former Minister of External Affairs, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, is the new Chief of Staff to President Muhammadu Buhari. Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, confirmed his appointment by the President at the commencement of the first virtual meeting of the Federal Executive Council. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo again has details.
His Excellency has approved the appointment of Professor Ibrahim Gambari as his new Chief of Staff.
This announcement by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, formally put to rest speculations on the appointment of the successor to the late Chief of Staff, Abba Kyari. Abba Kyari died of coronavirus on the 17th of last month. Professor Ibrahim Gambari, who had already assumed responsibilities in Nigeria's seat of government, was the Minister of External Affairs between 1984 and 1985, when President Muhammadu Buhari was military head of state. He is currently the chairperson of the panel of eminent persons of the African peer review mechanism.
I thank the Almighty Allah for the opportunity and the President of the Federal Republic for giving me this opportunity to serve him and, of course, the country. I think he demands loyalty, competence, and support.
So what will be your guiding principles as Chief of Staff?
To serve the President to the best of my ability.
Holder of the National Honours Award of Commander of the Federal Republic, CFR, Professor Ibrahim Gambari from Kwara State is the founder and chairman of Savannah Center for Diplomacy, Democracy and Development. It is a non-governmental think tank on research, policy studies, advocacy, and training on the nexus between conflict prevention and resolution, democratization, and development in Africa. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
Professor Ibrahim Gambari is the new name in town. Yes, the new Chief of Staff to the President, a big fish that has swum international waters and have safely returned home with a lot of experience. Mir Ogidi in this report tells us about the man, Professor Gambari.
Promoting sustainable peace, therefore, requires a human security and human development orientation and high-level political commitment and coordinated public policy initiative will, in my view, play a critical role in overcoming continuing challenges to the nexus of peace, security, and human development, particularly in Africa. Thank you very much for listening.
A sound global voice accompanied by a sincere smile emerging from a true African color, and it's the trademark of an outstanding international scholar and diplomat, Ambassador Ibrahim Gambari, CFR. Familiar name in the world's diplomatic arena, Professor Gambari, between 1999 and 2005, was Under Secretary General and Special Advisor to the UN Secretary General on Africa, a position he held to the benefit of African prosperity through the formation of the new Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD. This period comes with an extended responsibilities, serving as resident special representative of the Secretary General and head of the United Nations Mission to Angola, a delegate to the Assembly of the African Union, and as a member of the UN Secretary General's delegation. Professor Gambari was the chairman of the United Nations Special Committee Against Apartheid, during which he worked closely with African governments to coordinate UN policy to eradicate apartheid. His last assignment at the UN was as the joint special representative of the Secretary General and chairperson of the African Union Commission and head of the UN and AU hybrid mission in Darfur. During his tenure, the UN and AU hybrid mission to Darfur was the world's largest international peacekeeping mission. At the home front, Professor Ibrahim Gambari was the Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs and later the Minister of External Affairs of Nigeria between 1984 and 1985. He worked closely with regional leaders, institutions and governments, particularly within the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, on the economic and political development of the sub-region. Taking you back to the roots, Professor Gambari was born November 24, 1944 in Ilorin, Kwara State, Nigeria, and attended Provincial, now Government Secondary School, Ilorin, before proceeding to the King's College, Lagos. He subsequently attended the London School of Economics, where he obtained his BSc Economics degree in 1968 with a specialization in international relations. He later obtained his master's degree in 1970 and PhD in 1974, degrees from the Columbia University in New York in political science and international relations. He began his teaching career in 1969 at City University of New York before working at the University of Albany. Later, he taught at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Kaduna State, serving as the fifth head of department of the Department of Political Science and International Studies from 1982 and 1984. From 1986 and 1989, he was visiting professor at 3 universities in Washington, D.C., Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, Georgetown University, and Howard University. On March 12, 2013, he was appointed by the Kwara State Governor, Abdul Fattah Ahmad, as the Chancellor of the Kwara State University, Ilorin, Nigeria. He was also appointed as the Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Board of Governing Council of Bayero University, Kano. And today, Professor Gambari is the Chief of Staff to President Muhammadu Buhari, taking over from Malam Abba Kyari, who passed away on the 17th of April, 2020. Mayor Ogidi, NT News.
Take a break now. Panorama continues shortly. Stay with us.
February 2020, Nigeria. It is real. It is a nightmare. It is killing people all over the world. It is COVID-19. Compliance with the various states in Nigeria, the current measures will flatten the curves. Shutting down is not an act of wickedness, but an act to save lives. Stay home, stay safe. Observe social distance. Always put on a face mask while leaving your house. Make sure you are on a tricycle alone. Cars and buses cannot carry more than half their passengers. Always remember to wash your hands. Together, we will defeat COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibilities.
Welcome back. And now to latest updates on COVID-19. 184 new cases of COVID-19 have been reported in the country, 51 in Lagos, 23 in Jigawa, 16 each in Bauchi and Katsina States, 14 in Kano, 10 each in FCT and River States, 9 in Kwara, 5 each in Delta and Kaduna States. Others are 4 each in Sokoto and Oyo, 3 each in Kebbi, Nasarawa and Osun States, 2 in Ondo, while 1 case each in Ebonyi, Edo, Enugu, Anambra, Plateau, and Niger States. There are now 4,971 cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. 1,070 patients have been discharged, while 164 deaths recorded. Moving on. As the world continues to search for the cure of coronavirus pandemic, there have been suggestions for alternative cure through herbal medicine. Correspondent Rofia Animashan Badmus takes a look at this possibility.
The search for the cure of coronavirus pandemic continues to pose challenges to the world generally. This sitting at the University of Ibadan was a convergence of scientists, academics and herbalists for the search of an alternative cure for the pandemic, which has claimed many lives across the world.
We hope this type of gathering and subsequent meeting will find solution to COVID-19.
Let nobody tell us that that the herbal people cannot cure. What about when Luku happened? Luku, you can't see Luku now. It's just like COVID-19. And our people cured it.
The Vice Chancellor of the University of Ibadan says the challenges posed by coronavirus requires every step at overcoming it.
Because if you say you are able to do something, you have to let the whole world know the protocol that you have followed. And if possible, publish it in a scientific journal so people can see the stages, the steps you have taken, and be able to replicate.
The National Food, Drug Administration and Control was also not left out.
Immediately the university finish the analysis of the product, they get us the results, then we'll look into it and also take the products for maybe 2-3 months analysis in our lab.
The government of Oyo State says it is interested in production of an herbal cure for the virus.
We already have people who have products, who have samples, who have mixtures, who have solutions. But we don't just want to take it on the surface and start promoting it. We want to first subject them to scientific validation.
Some traditional rulers had at different fora expressed confidence in the possibility of eradicating the pandemic through herbal drugs. This, they said, Nigeria could produce if pursued. In Ibadan, Rofia and Mashan Badmos, NTA News.
And joining me live in the studio of Panorama today is the Director General of the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria, FRIN, Professor Adeshola Adepoju. Welcome to Panorama, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We know that the coronavirus pandemic is one of the events with the world history that has taken the entire globe by surprise. This including institutes like yours, researchers as well as scientists. Would you say this is so for your institute?
Thank you so much. I don't think there's an exception to that. No one was prepared for it. No one thought it was going to come. Everybody had their plans of work and activities for the year, and we just found ourselves under this new strange condition of life and infectious disease that has engulfed the entire globe. So really, and frankly speaking, nobody really could say it was prepared for it.
Okay, so is it true that your institute has come up with a remedy that can treat symptoms of COVID-19?
I would say yes, but it's still subject to NAFDAC analysis and certification. And we're in touch with NAFDAC since before now, for the past 5 years, we have our biomedicinal center that has been busy working with herbs to get remedy for one ailment or the other. So that really gave us an edge when this pandemic came to quickly move to the lab, even within the lockdown. All the scientists were there working to see what they can do. And as I speak to you, they have 2-line mixture that they've been able to come up with that has been put to trial. And they were convinced that it's treating the symptoms. But we still wait till we're through with NAFDAC procedure and protocol and see how far we can go.
Okay, would you say, in terms of originality, would you say that FRIN claims total ownership of those products?
I don't think it's an issue of claim. It's our product because it's the only research institute in the country that is mandated the forest. And when we're saying the forest, we're not only talking about the trees, we're talking about even the wildlife in the forest, as well as the non-timber forest product. So it's not an issue of claim. It's one of the direct mandate of the institute. And we're only doing what our principal has asked us to do, because at the emergence of this, all of the agency in Federal Ministry of Environment relating to one activities or the other that could at least reduce or bring about one palliative or the other as related to this, we're giving mandate and marching order to go back to the field. And that's when all of us come to work on the directive of our minister that everybody should go and do what you can do based on your mandate and what intervention can you make to this pandemic.
Okay.
And that's what actually gave us that morale boost, whatever.
This two line of products that you've come up with, would you say there had been clinical tests on them to consider their efficacy?
At our level, all the tests that's expected to have been carried out and the trials had been done.
Okay.
And that's why we're both to put it out and say, let other people do their own job, because every agency and parastatal government has their own mandate. If you are true with your own mandate, you should be able to surrender your products to other agencies of government. They should do their own test and come out with their findings.
Okay, so what would you say is stopping the mass production of this product?
You can't go into mass production until certified.
Okay.
And the only body empowered to certify the product is NAFDAC. So when NAFDAC is through, they've given us all the requirements. They wanted us to prepare and submit as to be able to allow them commence their own leg of investigation that we're putting together. And I believe by the end of today, we'll be able to submit and surrender everything they had requested of us to allow them commence their own leg of investigation.
Okay, finally, I would like you to comment on the possibility of upscaling on what you have done so far.
Really, that won't be a difficult thing to do. One, like I told you, is our mandate to beyond the COVID-19. The federal government in the past 3-4 years, via green projects, empower us yearly to expand the forest cover of the country. There's hardly be any year that we're not adding 1,000 hectares to Nigerian forest estate. So we'll just incorporate whatever are these herbs and plants to those who continue to plant, to establish plantation of it, so that we can do a mass production of it when certified.
When certification is given. Thank you very much, sir. I've been speaking with the Director General, Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria, Professor Adeshola Adejare, on the herbal option that has been discovered in Frim. Once again, I say thanks for coming on Panorama.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll now take a break. When we come back, Panorama continues. Okay? Moving on. The Governors Forum in increasing capacity of national response to the fight against COVID-19 through the strengthening of fiscal framework and adequate provision of medical incentive across states with critical needs. Abubakar Usman Akwanga reports that the measures formed part of communique reached during NGF 8th teleconference on COVID-19.
The communique drew attention of the federal government on the need for inclusive and strategic engagements of states in sharing of revenues and other refunds from treasury loot to meet shortfall occasioned by COVID-19. The forum also agreed to review state 2020 budgets and the amendment of state procurement guidelines to support e-procurement for the participation of small and medium-sized enterprises in line with operation of World Bank State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability project for the pro-poor fiscal response to mitigate impact of COVID-19. The forum is also to initiate software for the deployment of e-procurement across states as a service model with a framework agreement. The NGF also pledges to sustain all multilateral and bilateral partnership, collaborate with Dangote Foundation and Coalition Against COVID-19 for the recruitment of health volunteers to assist in the management of facilities across the country, and received a briefing from the Group Managing Director of NNPC, Mele Kyari, on delivery of permanent medical facilities and supplies of other equipment to accelerate performance of frontline workers in the continued fight against the pandemic. The 36 state governors expressed disagreement on the proposed Control of Infectious Disease 2020 bill for lack of consultation and constituted a committee to liaise with leadership of the National Assembly for appropriate action. NGF Chairman and Governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, on behalf of the forum, congratulates Ambassador Ibrahim Gambari on his appointment as Chief of Staff to the President and wish him a successful tenure. In Abuja, Abubakar Usman Akwanga, NTA News.
Residents of rural communities, villages in Ijebu axis of Ogun State are still lacking adequate knowledge about prevention of coronavirus pandemic, which many of them believe cannot get to their communities. Correspondent Joel Bukola reports that only a handful of people in the community wear face masks.
With many already equipped with relevant information about the preventive measures, but this has not been replicated at most villages in the hinterland. At villages such as Imaruku, a Nigerian community in Ijebu Northeast local government, the awareness of coronavirus is in the front burner, but many of them do not wear face mask or use hand sanitizer. Elizabeth Abolaji, who believes in the efficacy of prayers, says she is immune against the virus. Ronke Oseni, a peasant farmer, has a face mask, but like many others, she only keeps it in her wardrobe.
Use the wrapper of our scarf to protect ourselves, even though we have the nose cover at home.
It's because that I'm at home. That is the reason why I didn't use my nose cover.
Physical distancing and use of hand sanitizer are still strange to most residents of Ododio, which is also a Nigerian community isolated from Ijebu central areas. For most of the children and adults, life is business as usual, as they are oblivious of the need to key into the preventive measures to safeguard themselves. Many of the old people still believe they cannot contract coronavirus unless they go to the city.
You don't go to church, you don't go to mosque. Even there was a time I was to do a ceremony, a bee. I had to cancel it.
With many rural dwellers yet to adopt necessary preventive measures, more public enlightenment is needed at the grassroots level to contain the spread of coronavirus. From Aton, Joel Bukola, NTA News.
And that has been Panorama on the network service of the NTA. Thanks for watching and good afternoon.